In the first half of December 1942, what remains of the free world learns once again of the horrors of Nazi atrocities, and once again the terror has no end. This is War Against Humanity, a series of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus Olsson. In the last weeks of November, the armed insurgent resistance against Axis occupation in Europe gained more active support by the United Nations allies, transforming it into a military operation behind the lines. The Nazi countermeasures continued to reap countless civilian lives. In Germany, the population was reported to have discovered the humanity of their slaves, and the SS was outraged at inter-ethnic sexual relations. The rate of murder in the Nazi genocide slowed down, leaving several millions alive, but still destined for extermination. And while these European Jews have their murders postponed for now, in Africa, a new Jewish minority faces the Nazi wrath. Until now, the Jewish population of Axis-controlled North Africa, despite being under the collaborationist rule of Vichy France and fascist Italy, had been spared the worst of the fate the anti-Semites have in mind. Under Italian rule, Jews lived a segregated life after the enactment of the 1938 Racial Manifesto. The roughly 40,000 Jewish Libyans weren't allowed to attend public schools, hold public office, or work for the government. When the Italians regained control after the brief British occupation of Cyrenaica, their situation worsened when the Italians learned that many Libyan Jews had hailed the Brits as liberators. Mussolini ordered all Jews imprisoned in the Ghiado concentration camp. In effect, around 2,500 Jews were locked up under harsh living conditions, hundreds dying from a typhoid outbreak now in December. Thousands more are pressed into forced labor. While it is now clear that the Axis won't control Libya for much longer, much harsher racial laws come into effect on December 17th. But they will never be enforced. The roughly 410,000 Jews living in the French North African colonies were also subjected to anti-Semitic oppression in one way or another, though this differed from country to country. In Morocco, Jewish civil rights were largely maintained, partly thanks to Sultan Mohammed V, who exclaimed that, "I recognize all inhabitants as my children, and that includes the Jews." Still, most foreign Jewish refugees were incarcerated, and many of the 200,000 Moroccan Jews still faced Aryanization of property and business, exclusion from public life, and petty discrimination. So did Algerian Jews, but they were also stripped of their citizen rights and had to wear visible marks. Thousands were incarcerated in forced labor camps. Many camps are in the Sahara, where the slaves worked to construct the Mediterranean-Niger railway line in the murderous dry heat of the desert. For the Jews in the now Allied occupied parts of North Africa, things are about to improve, at least slightly. The imprisoned Jews in Morocco and Algeria have hope to be freed, and the immediate threat of a looming genocide is gone. Yet, as the Americans and British roll through North Africa, they are largely indifferent to the fate of the many communities for whom colonial rule and exploitation will continue, sometimes for decades. Under the new Allied-backed French colonial regime, Jews remain second-rate citizens. The civil rights of Algerian Jews will only be reinstated later next year, and many of the Mediterranean Niger labor camps continue operations. It will take months, sometimes years, before the prisoners are released. And for the Jews living in Tunisia, things are getting even worse. Until now, even direct German occupation in North Africa had not led to immediate moves towards extermination of the Jews. Perhaps because of the proximity to the front lines, perhaps because it's technically Italy's playground, or perhaps because the Afrika Korps did not see it as a priority. There were advanced plans for what should happen, especially after an Allied defeat. But the SS wanted action already before that. One reason for that is to gain the meaningful support of the Arab population, most notably that of the Palestinian nationalist movement led by al-Husseini, whom German Führer Adolf Hitler had forged a strategic alliance with against the Jews and the British. We will cover that in a bio episode on al-Husseini. In addition, this past summer, the Nazis set up an Einsatzkommando, a mass murder squad under SS Obersturmbannführer Walter Rauff, with mission to go to North Africa as soon as possible. Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler sent Rauff to Tobruk on July 20th, where he met Oberstleutnant Siegfried Westphal, Rommel's chief of staff, and began preparations. Rauff then went to Athens, where his Einsatzkommando arrived on July 29 and started preparing for deployment. But then Rommel's war luck started running out. Rauff's team had no viable entry, and on September 18 they were called back to Berlin. The occupation of Tunisia changes that once again, and on November 24, Einsatzkommando Rauff arrives in Tunisia. Now in December, they go into action. Homes and stores are confiscated, and private possessions are stolen and sold. Synagogues are vandalized, Jews are beaten and kidnapped from the streets. A Jewish council is set up to avoid further violence, and with their aid, the Germans enlist 5,000 Jewish men to be enslaved in 32 labor camps. Two of them, located in Bizerte and Matur, are especially notorious, as numerous prisoners quickly succumb and die of disease, exhaustion, and mistreatment by their German guards. Like in Europe, this is the beginning of the Nazis' answer to the Jewish question that inevitably shall lead to extermination. In the last months, under pressure from the deteriorating German war effort, the increasing need for more material, and a lack of labor force, the SS have once again returned to the idea of working some Jews to death rather than murdering them immediately. But this is yet another ad hoc policy by some parts of the SS. It isn't anchored in firm policy and doesn't have the clear support by Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler. As we shall see later this month, it is well documented that he supports the idea of working Jews to death, but prefers more immediate methods. On December 1st in Kharkiv, outside Warsaw, 400 Jewish forced laborers are shot. When news of this massacre and others reaches the Warsaw ghetto, the remaining Jewish people panic. For a long time, the special status of owning a worker's permit came with a sense of safety. But now that this is an illusion, panic soon grows to anger. Emanuel Ringelblum, ghetto chronicler, writes on the 5th, "The community wants the enemy to pay dearly. They will attack them with knives, sticks, carbolic acid. They will not allow themselves to be seized in the streets because now they know that labor camp these days means death." It is a realization that those trying to organize resistance have been waiting for. Some ghetto inhabitants have been trying to convince their fellow Jewish Poles to rise up for months. A resistance group, the Jewish military organization ZZW, has existed since 1939, and several youth organizations formed the Jewish Combat Organization ZOB in July this year, when the Großaktion Warschau and mass murders at Treblinka began. Still, calls for an uprising were ignored, partly because the ZOB and the ZZW both lacked enough able-bodied manpower and weapons. Although the ZZW has been coordinating with the leaders of the Armia Krajowa, the Polish Home Army, they have not been truly incorporated into the resistance movement due to prevailing anti-Semitism in parts of the Polish resistance. But now, both are effectively integrated, and the Jewish Poles start to receive training, supplies, weapons, and ammunition. On directive from the Polish government in exile, the Jews will also get peaceful help. After two failed attempts in September and November, on the 4th this month, the Żegota is established. It's a council to aid the Jews in Poland, which shall help Jews go into hiding, get access to food, clothing, fake identification, and take care of orphan Jews. It will provide aid to some tens of thousands of Polish Jews. But these people are taking tangible risks that can cost your life. On December 6, German troops enter the Polish village of Ciepielów and Rekowka, where they arrest 31 people belonging to 5 different families. They are accused of harboring and feeding Jews, 2 of which are indeed found in the families' farmhouses. The families shall be punished by death. Not just the adults who decided to go against the German rule, but their 20 children as well. In Ciepielów, the Kowalski family is among the victims. The Germans shoot 40-year-old Bronislava and her 47-year-old husband Adam, as well as their children, 16-year-old Janina, 12-year-old Sofia, 6-year-old Stefan, 4-year-old Henrik, and Tadeusz, only 1 year old. And while there is no end to the Nazi German massacres, one of the killing factories has now fulfilled its purpose and closes. In some areas, virtually no Jewish communities remain. With the Krakow and Lvov districts largely emptied, operations in the Bevchech extermination facility are halted after roughly a year of operation. Towards the middle of December, the final transport arrives with the last people from smaller communities in the Lvov district. A small crew of staff and prisoners will stay to burn corpses and remove any traces of the camp ever having existed, after which the grounds will be turned into a farm for one of the Ukrainian guards. During its height of operation from March 17 to December 11, 1942, between 550,000 and 600,000 Jews have been murdered here alone. That is 2,230 murders every day for 269 days. That is as if the Titanic would sink 5 times a week, every week for 38 weeks. 190 Titanic shipwrecks in only 9 months. Only very few who arrived there survived. One of them is Rudolf Reda. He describes how he got away. At the end of November, I had already been confined to the hell of Bevchech for a few months. One morning, I was told that there was a need for tin in the camp. I went with a truck accompanied by 4 SS men and a guard to Lvov. After a whole day of loading the tin sheets, I remained in the car under the guard of one of the bullies, while all the others went for entertainment. For hours I sat without moving. Then I saw that my guard had fallen asleep and was snoring. Without thinking, instinctively, I slid down the car. The bully continued sleeping. I stood on the sidewalk, appearing as if I were arranging the tin sheets, but slowly moving towards Legionov Street, where the traffic was quite heavy. I pulled my hat over my eyes, the streets were dark and nobody saw me. I remembered where a Polish woman, my landlady, lived. I went there and she hid me. Rudolf Reda will survive the war and be one of only 2 to testify about their experiences at Bevchech after the war. The actual detailed situation of this burning hell on earth is about to once again make the news across the free world. On December 10, foreign ministries of a large number of Allied countries receive a weighty document signed by Edward Raczynski, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the exiled Polish government in London. It is partly based on a report smuggled out of occupied Europe by Jan Karski. A diplomat and reserve officer before the war, he joined the Polish Home Army as a courier and investigator after occupation, traveling several times between Poland and the government in London. In October 1942, he was tasked to compile a report on the general state in Poland, including the situation of the Jews. He wants to investigate the rumors about mass murders in camps firsthand. One of his contacts in Warsaw takes him to a hidden tunnel, through which he crawls right into the headquarters of the ZZW in the Warsaw Ghetto. During 2 separate trips, he witnesses the horrors of ghetto life, from piles of corpses, starving shells of humans to summary murder. One guide tells him how the ghetto has been systematically emptied, concluding that, ultimately, they intend to kill us all. Disguised as a guard, Karski also manages to sneak into the Izbica Lubelska transit camp to document how thousands of Jews are sent to the Bevchech extermination facility. Raczynski's report reads, "The new methods of mass slaughter applied during the last few months confirm the fact that the German authorities aim with systematic deliberation at the total extermination of the Jewish population of Poland and the many thousand of Jews whom the German authorities deported to Poland from Western and Central European countries and from the German Reich itself." The report contains further details about slave labor, Großaktion Warschau, deportation trains, mass murder methods by poison gas in Chełmno, as well as the existence and practices of Bevchech, Treblinka, and Sobibor. The report underestimates the death toll, estimating that 1/3 of the 3 million Polish Jews have been murdered. The report ends with a call to action to the Allied governments, urging them to find means offering the hope that Germany might be effectively restrained from continuing to apply her methods of mass extermination. After briefing his Polish superiors, Jan Karski starts to travel the world to tell his story. On his journeys, he meets prominent journalists, politicians, government officials, and heads of state. But he will find it challenging at times to find a supportive audience. When Karski shares his experiences with U.S. Supreme Court Judge Felix Frankfurter later next year, the judge will exclaim, "I do not believe you." The Polish embassy protests, and the judge elaborates. "I did not say that he was lying. I said that I could not believe him. There is a difference." Clearly, he's expressing astonishment, not disbelief. But why won't some believe what they hear? It's not because it defies imagination. Clearly it doesn't. Someone thought this up. Imagining absolute annihilation is within all of our minds. It always has been. Ragnarok, Judgment Day, Armageddon, Dante's Inferno, the Apocalypse, to just name a few. And it's not because barbarous murder and sadistic torture is something new. It has accompanied humankind for as long as we can remember. So why won't they believe what they hear? Is it because these specific people are not important enough for them to make the effort to care? Or worse, that they deserve their fate? Is it because it defies comprehension that a supposedly civilized nation would do this? Or is it because if it is true and we do nothing while it is happening, we are either utterly powerless or complicit? Whatever the reason for disbelief, every answer imaginable is terrifying. Never forget.